Everyone talks about Ted Bundy's charm, but what if I told you that was the least dangerous thing about him? This isn't just a serial killer story, it's a warning about the face of evil that looks just like you and me. Ted Bundy's public persona versus private darkness. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. If you didn't know who Ted Bundy was, and you met him at, say, a political fundraiser or some college law mixer back in the day, you probably wouldn't blink. You'd just think, oh, he's smart, kinda handsome, maybe a little too confident. But yeah, he seems normal, and that's what's so freaking chilling about him. I mean, the guy had the whole golden boy act down cold. He dressed sharp, spoke well, knew how to look people dead in the eye, and smile just enough to come off trustworthy. Like courtroom Bundy wasn't sitting there twitching or looking guilty. No, he was literally defending himself, cracking jokes, and waving to the camera like he was running for student council president, not standing trial for murder. And that wasn't just some last ditch effort to save himself. That was his whole life. He volunteered for political campaigns, he gave lectures about crime prevention while he was committing crimes, he applied to law school, and people actually took him seriously. That's the part that gets under your skin. He built this persona, clean cut, intelligent, helpful, and wore it like armor. It let him move through the world completely unnoticed, while hiding everything. And here's where it gets even weirder. Behind all that confidence, a guy who constantly doubted himself, total imposter syndrome vibes, Bundy was a textbook narcissist. He needed admiration like oxygen, but at the same time, he didn't actually believe he deserved success unless he manipulated or faked his way into it. The mental cocktail, that's what made him so deadly. He needs to be seen as someone important, someone powerful, but he didn't want to earn it through normal means. That took too long, too much effort. So instead, he learned how to perform, how to read people, mirror their energy, and tell them exactly what they wanted to hear. It's like he was auditioning for most likely to succeed while hiding a literal monster under the surface. The scariest thing? It worked. He got away with it for years, and people liked him. That's what keeps me up at night. Honestly, because if someone like Bundy could fool that many people for that long, how many others are out there doing the same thing right now? It's a brutal reminder that evil doesn't always show up wearing a mask and carrying a weapon. Sometimes it shows up in a sweater vest with a law book in one hand and your trust in the other. The psychology of a predator. So, let's talk about what was really going on under the hood with Ted Bundy. Because, yeah, he did horrific things, but it's the why that really messes with your head. Like, how does someone go from being the guy who helps old ladies carry their groceries to, you know, that? Here's the thing, Bundy wasn't just some evil caricature. He was a walking checklist of antisocial personality traits. Narcissism, off the charts. Lack of empathy, through the floor. Manipulation, that was his superpower. I mean, this was a guy who could convince strangers to help him load something into a car with a broken arm, all while planning their murder. That's no clumsy impulse. That's calculated, cold blooded control. And that's really what it came down to for him, control. More than violence, more than even the kill itself. Buddy needed to feel in charge of the narrative, of the people around him, of everything. It's why he defended himself in court. It's why he escaped from prison twice. It wasn't just about freedom, it was about proving he was smarter than everyone else. Outplaying the system gave him a rush that killing alone couldn't. FBI profilers later said Buddy wasn't just a predator, he was a social chameleon. He could read a room, adapt instantly, and make you feel like you were the most interesting person in the world, while calculating how to destroy you in the back of his mind. One profiler called him a black hole wrapped in a smile, which honestly, that's the most accurate description I've ever heard. Even in his prison interviews, you can hear it, this weird hollow calmness. He never sounds evil or even particularly upset. He sounds like someone giving a TED talk about emotions they read in a book once. When he talked about his crimes, it was like he was describing a movie, detached, clinical, like he couldn't quite grasp the human weight of what he'd done. And over time, these crimes escalated because the fantasy kept changing. He wasn't just chasing a thrill, he was chasing a bigger version of the fantasy in his head. Once one scenario stopped giving him that sense of power, he'd level it up, add more planning, more risk, more control. It's like watching a monster build itself layer by layer. Honestly, that's the most terrifying part. Ted Bundy didn't become a predator overnight. He built himself into one. And he did it in plain sight. Master of deception. How he got away for so long. You know, if there's one thing that makes Ted Bundy feel extra unreal, beyond the horror of what he actually did, it's how long he managed to keep everyone fooled. Like, he didn't just get away with it once, he did it again and again, across multiple states, and people just kept thinking, no way it's him. He's too normal. And honestly, that's the trap. Bundy weaponized normal. He used it like a disguise. He had this way of blending into everyday environments, libraries, college dorms, crowded beaches, places where you're supposed to feel safe. And he didn't look sketchy, no weird vibes, no shady energy. He looked like someone's older brother who helped tutor freshmen and borrowed your stapler. One of the creepiest parts? That fake arm cast trick. I mean, come on. He'd wear a sling or a leg brace, limp around with crutches, and ask women to help him carry something to his car. Like, the level of planning in that, it's not impulsive. It's theater, full on performance. And it worked because people instinctively want to help someone who looks like they're struggling. Plus, let's not forget, the guy had aliases, plural. He used different names, different IDs, switched license plates like it was no big deal. He literally drove across state lines, mid crime spree, and just started again like it was a new level in the game. The police back then didn't have the cross-state databases we've got now, so he used that to his full advantage. New state, new look, same monster. What really gets me though is how hard it was for people to believe it could be him. Even after the red flags started stacking up, coworkers, ex-girlfriends, friends, so many of them were like, but he was so charming, he couldn't possibly do that. And that's the genius of his deception. He didn't just take a name or a limb, he faked an entire personality. That's what makes Bundy such a terrifying case study. He didn't hide in the shadows, he hid in the light. He leaned into people's trust, into their assumptions, and used them like tools. Every time someone said, "But he seems like such a nice guy," he probably smiled to himself because that's exactly how he wanted it. The truth about his escapes and final interview. Okay, let's talk about the part in the Ted Bundy story that honestly feels like something out of a movie. The escapes, yes, plural. Bundy didn't just break out of custody once, he did it twice. And both times, the authorities were absolutely shook. The first time, it was kind of wild. He literally jumped out of a secondary story library window during a supervised visit. No handcuffs, no leg irons, nothing. Just ran like I can't even make this up. He lost a little weight in prison to make it easier. Planned it out in his head, and when the moment came, boom, gone. And honestly, That was just a warm up. Because the second escape, that one's next level insane. Bundy somehow managed to carve a hole in the ceiling of his jail cell, shimmy his way through the crawl space like he was playing hide and seek with the guards, and disappeared. He'd been stashing food, prepping for weeks, and nobody noticed, not until he was already long gone. Authorities were straight up humiliated and terrified because now they had a serial killer on the loose again. What makes it even worse? While he was out, he didn't stop. He went right back to his crimes like there wasn't even a pause. That's when you realize this wasn't about freedom or fear of prison. It was about the power to outsmart everyone around him. That control, that thrill, it was his oxygen. Now fast forward to the final interview, the one before his execution. If you've seen it, you know it's haunting. Benny suddenly wanted to help. He talked about the dangers of violent media, of pornography, of how certain content had influenced his dark urges. And at first, it kind of sounds like remorse, like he's trying to leave a warning. But if you listen closely, it's not really about helping, because even in those final moments, Bundy was bargaining, dangling details about unsolved crimes, trying to buy time, acting like he held all the cards. That wasn't a confession, it was manipulation. A last-minute attempt to stay relevant, to stay in control, classic Bundy. And here's the million-dollar question. Was he warning us? Or was it just one last ego trip? Honestly, I think it was both. He knew people would hang on his every word, and he loved that. But maybe, just maybe, there was a part of him that wanted us to see the monster clearly. Not because he felt guilty, but because being remembered scared him less than being forgotten. Why Ted Bundy was more dangerous than you think? Here's the thing no one really wants to admit about Ted Bundy. It wasn't the brutality of his crimes that made him uniquely dangerous. It was how normal he seemed while doing all of it. And that right there, that's the real nightmare fuel. We've all been fed this myth that monsters are with messy hair, creepy van, weird energy, right? But Bundy shattered that idea. He thrived by doing the opposite. He was calculated, composed, even charming. You wouldn't cross the street to avoid him. You'd probably hold the door open for him. And that's why he got away with so much. He played the long game. This wasn't some impulsive guy lashing out. He planned, he stalked, he adapted. He changed cities, changed routines, even changed personalities depending on what the situation called for. And the scariest part? He thrived under pressure. When most people panicked, Bundy got calmer, more precise. That kind of manipulation. It's not just a true crime curiosity. It has real modern day implications. Think about it. We're still fascinated by these charming dark triad personalities. Narcissistic, manipulative, lacking empathy, especially when they show up in powerful places. And we still miss the red flag when someone's got the polished, successful, put-together exterior. Sound familiar? And yeah, Bundy left a mark on criminal profiling. A big one. The FBI started looking at killers differently after him. They realized they couldn't just chase people who looked off. They had to study behavior, psychology, patterns. He changed the game. But honestly, we still get some things wrong. We still think evil comes with a warning label that will just know when someone is dangerous. But Bundy proved that's not true. He was the kind of evil that doesn't growl. It smiles. It shakes your hand. It asks you how your day is. So when people say, he didn't look like a killer, that's exactly the point. That's what made him so terrifying. And it's why his story still sticks with us. Not because it was gory, but because it felt possible. Because it reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who know exactly how to hide in plain sight. Conclusion. What we can learn from the Ted Bundy case. So yeah, Ted Bundy wasn't just a killer. He was a walking red flag in disguise. Polite, smart, funny, the kind of guy you might sit next to in class or see volunteering at the campaign booth. And that's what makes his story so important and honestly so disturbing, because what Bundy teaches us, more than anything, is that evil doesn't always look like a villain in a horror movie. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it holds a logbook, and sometimes it blends in so well that by the time you realize something's off, it's already too late. That's why trusting your gut matters. If someone gives you weird vibes, even if they seem totally normal, listen to that. Don't worry about being rude. Your instincts are there for a reason. And Bundy's story is a chilling reminder of what can happen when we ignore them just because someone seems nice. If this video gave you chills, or even just made you think differently about what danger actually looks like, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more deep dives like this. And hey, drop your theories, your thoughts, or even just a "oh, I didn't know that" in the comments. I read all of them, and I love hearing what you guys think. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and most of all, keep questioning everything.